Hey, how's it going, everybody? JT here with the Ethfinance EVMavericks once again for episode number 40 of our happy hour. And today we are joined by Greg Di Prisco. I want to say, I don't know how to say the name of your company. Can you give that to us real quick?
Yes, we are Ajna Labs, and we are building the Ajna Protocol. It's AJNA. In retrospect, we would have named it something different.
Well, now we know. So, Ajna Labs. Okay, very good. Thanks. I'm so glad that you could join us today. All right, to open up the show, the Weekly Doots live stream is all about showcasing the best of the week from the Ethfinance community on Reddit. This is a read-along reaction series, and if you want to follow along, head to dailydoots.com. Designed and produced by our very own Hanniabu. And while you're at it, go grab today's POAP. Big thanks to Tricky Troll for capturing and curating each of these doots every single day, and the A word for curating this beloved weekly list. As always, if you know someone who wants a piece of this action, send them my way. So we're going to jump right in at dailydoots.com as we go over our rich list. At number 10, Hanniabu at 56. Wait, I've got to refresh this. I know this is different now. Make sure I got everything refreshed here. Okay, yes, lovely. All right. Hanniabu sitting at 57, Scientist at 59, K-Brot at 60, Set One Less at 63, 696 underscore ETH at 67. He's getting close to his magic number. Tricky Troll at 70, Cryptowell Currency at 82, Logri the Bard is at 84, and the almighty everlasting Superfizz is atop the chart at 127. Congrats to all of our leaderboard people. Let me get back up to the top here, and we're going to do our opener here where we start with our announcements. It looks like if you have participated in the KZG ceremony, you can get your POAP here. So all of you friends that have done the KZG thing, go get your POAP. The Morning Trinity, Hey Chibi chimes in. Ethereum user 5 quat gives us a price of 1584 and 696 ETH at a 0.054. Pour one out for the ratio. Oh my God. All right, weekly haiku courtesy of JS Tears. Warping, not bridging. EVM is not judging. Just network switching. How does he do it? JS Tears, thank you so much for the weekly haiku. Here is your validator queue. According to Space Cider, your daily beacon chain dose active validators over 860,000. The number joining, the number leaving is both 0. Wow. The entry queue is down 500 from yesterday's number. I think this is the first time we have seen this equilibrium taking place here. Since he has started tracking this, 151 days have passed. The amount of active validators has increased from 572,000 to 860,000, and the amount of staked ether has increased from 18.3 million to 27.5 million, which is around $14 billion in USD value using today's Ethereum price. That is crazy good. And our ship post of the week, because we always want to save the best for first. He said, I'm making a pilgrimage to see the burial site of our beloved Gary the Cow today. Well, looky there. Yes, indeed, my friend Superfizz paid a visit to Kansas City, and he was helping me out with the Rocket School video, and I decided to see, he saw the skit that I put together and threw out on Twitter, and he goes, God, I got to get there and do something with you. I'm like, book a flight, bro. Like, already, let's go. And so he came to the office. He literally flew in yesterday, spent about 3 hours, and then flew back out. And I was just happy as shit that he could make it and see him in person. Picked him up at lunch, and we actually filmed the How Does Ethereum Staking Work video. That'll be video number 1 for the Rocket School series. It'll be launching before too long. And we filmed it once at the studio, and then I took him to the fire pit where I filmed all those videos over the years, and we did another video there. So we'll see how it all turns out. It's stressful, man, trying to get 3 or 4 cameras going. I hope it all works out. So thank you, Superfizz, for stopping by. What a gem. So very good. That was sweet. I didn't know that was going to be the shit post of the week. That's really nice. Okay, so we're going to switch gears, and we're going to talk to Greg. Greg Di Prisco is a co-founder of Ajna. It rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? Ajna
You got it.
Labs, and I'm really excited now. So I mean, we'll just go straight into it. We actually had you booked a while back as a guest, and then some kind of thing happened, bug happened, and you guys have been kind of heads down working through all of that. So I was taking a look at your website, and I'm actually sharing my screen here too. You guys have a ton of people working for you, so give us this 50,000-foot view of what you guys do and where you're going next in light of the bug and everything that had happened before. I'm so glad you could come on and use our platform to talk about this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And before I go into Ajna, I do want to give you a shout out because I'm a long time our Ethereum, ETH trader, Ethfinance user. And I don't know if your current users know, but back in the previous bear market, JT was like the motivator in chief. He kept us going through the whole thing. I was working at MakerDAO back then, and
shoot, okay.
I used to love to see your post every day. And I'm going to remind you, one point, I think it was like 2016 or 2017, you invited me out to the fire pit. You didn't even know who I was, as I was some Anon on Reddit.
Yeah.
And you were still giving Anon invites back then. And I'm going to take you up on it one day.
You should get on that plane, man. Maybe we could do the super fizz treatment and have you come in and do an actual fireside chat by the fire pit. That might be kind of fun. Maybe
new all-time high. That's my goal.
The next all-time high. The next all-time high. I think my wife will be awfully determined to actually, use some money to go buy a thing called a different house, because we've been there for like 24 years. She bought it on first-time home buyer, so her idea of fun is not me having people at the fire pit.
In between those two events, then.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what an honor. So you used to work for MakerDAO. So
most of the team did, actually.
This is interesting. See, today I learned.
Yeah.
So who am I thinking of from Argentina that was a big part of MakerDAO back then? Maybe Mariano. How were you working with him back then? He's a
Yeah, I worked with everybody. So the whole most of the Ajna founding team came from Maker, I think, except for one or two people. And we at the time I was their head of business development. The guys that came to build Ajna were running the trading desk for DAI. And we had taken a lot of the lessons that we learned from the previous 4 or 5 years and said, all right, we need to build this thing.
Well, that's cool as shit. Okay, so you guys, I was talking to Billy Lutke last week from Intuition, and he had basically said, like their team was at Uport, and the things that they learned through Uport when the team went on to do other things, it's like you're like honing your sword. You know what I mean? Like you're putting a sharper edge on things that you understand and make the next version even better. So wow. Okay. Very good. So you guys have been around, most of your teams from Maker. Okay. So this adds a lot of color to the conversation. And I will say, we do have some people in the audience that may jump in and ask questions. That's the beauty of Discord. So let's go ahead and do what is it?
Mm-hmm. So Ajna, in the simplest terms, which is hard to do, is an automated lending market. If you think about what Uniswap did for trading, where there's a completely permissionless pool, there's no oracles, there's no governance, there's just a pool that specifies two assets. One side of the book is liquidity providers, the other side is traders. We do the same thing for lending. You specify any two assets, you put your liquidity on one side of the book, and the other side can borrow. So Uniswap for lending is my elevator pitch.
Uniswap for lending. Okay, that's great. And so let's go into this thing called a griefing vector, if you want to get that out of the way in the conversation first, and tell us what happened and where we're going.
We left Maker during the summer of 2021 when the foundation wound down. We started this project autumn of 2021, so right after, and it took us about 2 years to get it live. We finally get it live a little less than 2 years. We got it live in June of 2023. And about 2 months into the protocol running, we had a white hat report on Immunify that said, hey, look, there's not a big incentive for anyone to do this because the profit would be minimal, but there's a way to really screw with your users. That's why we call it a griefing vector. Griefing is when there's a way you can cause harm to someone else, but it doesn't really do you any good. So there wasn't a big market incentive to run this attack, but we said to ourselves, look, like, we're building for the long term. There's no sense in accumulating more TVL into this protocol when this is possible. Let's just ask everybody to pay back because it's immutable. We can't shut it down. So we just had to ask people to pay back. And then we got to work on a fix. And now we are having more audits and we'll be up and running again in a few weeks.
That's okay. So that's good. So this is kind of akin to, nobody's going to get hurt, but it's going to be like, it's going to be one of those things where you never know what the economic incentive is to like just dump a bunch of gravel on a perfectly paved highway and just make the experience crappy for enough people that they just walk from it.
We mentioned, learning your lessons, right? I've learned that there's no limit to what people will try to do, even if they don't have an incentive to do it.
Right, right. And even just because they just want to create noise or havoc, or it could be a corporate espionage type of thing, or not espionage, but like going after somebody. It's like,
well, do you remember the what was it, Polkadot, when they had their multi-sig bricked?
Oh,
and
gosh.
The guy's like, I think I killed it. Like that guy.
Yeah. That was more than griefing. Yeah. So this is like, you're not going to damage the person's house, but you could throw a lot of toilet paper all over it just to make things interesting, so.
Yeah. You can ruin a user's experience, which is not something we wanted for the long term. Okay.
So once the audits are done, then what?
Then we redeploy.
And is there a jurisdictional regulatory side of this? Is it okay to use everywhere? Is there restrictions depending on different countries, or what do you have going on in that realm?
So I think learning the lessons we did from Maker, we took a bit of an extreme approach to decentralization. So we just write code. Gotcha. Once the code's deployed, we are actually winding down our entity, walking away, because you don't need us anymore. We don't run our own front ends. Other people run the front ends. It's an entirely decentralized ecosystem. The only touch point, I guess you could say, that anyone has moving forward with the protocol is that we have an on-chain grant system. And it's a completely non-human intermediated, no multi-sig, no Oracle grant system that uses I've been told by the math guys on our team, I can't keep saying quadratic because it uses a square root function, but a quadratic-like function that lets you vote across a large number of proposals and distribute your share of the budget every quarter.
Somebody's going to have to come up with the marketing jargon for not quadratic.
It's quasi-quadratic.
Quasi-dratic. Just quasi-dratic. TM.
Because I was saying quadratic, and then they kept being like, no, it uses the square root. It's not quadratic.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, EVM Lion, if you can hear me, can you go on mute? Because we're getting a little bit of echo back into the Discord channel. Thanks, brother. Okay, so... all right. So I remember somebody making the point about Uniswap, since you kind of did a comparison, and the idea that the code lives in the wild and it's not, that's how that thing works. And somebody had mentioned it, like, even though it's in the wild, there are certain gatekeepers that can prevent certain tokens from showing up. But the important thing for people to remember is that they can interact directly with the smart contract and not even use like a website, right? So I'm assuming that's how that's going to work for you guys, just in case there is some kind of, no thing that pops up on somebody's front end website.
Well, yeah, like I said, we don't plan to run our own front ends. So we have our primary front end today is Summerfy. They are a UK-based company. They are one of the larger DeFi front ends.
What's the URL for that?
Summer.fi.
Okay, I'm opening up. I'm streaming the screen so people can see it.
They used to be Oasis.app, if you remember that. They rebranded in 2022.
Okay, Oasis, yeah.
Yeah, so they've been the primary access point to Ajna since we launched in June. They're doing a great job. We have more front ends coming online soon. So our idea from the get-go was let's not box out competitive front ends by launching our own. Let's just not have one and then let other people run them.
That's great. That sounds very, very good for decentralization too. And it takes a lot of the onus and the pressure of you guys having to, hang on to data and all that, right? So, I was going to see if anybody in the audience had any questions at all. I see Logri the Bard is here. That's awesome. Treebeard, good to see you. David Can, David Utro, looks like a new user here. Good to have you, David. Hanniabu. He's what?
He's from our team.
Well, we are glad you made it and found our little hole in the internet. So I'm going to open up the room if anybody has any questions.
No questions here. I would just like to say that I think this is a great idea. And, actually, after hearing you explain, Uniswap for lending, I'm kind of surprised that this hasn't popped up already. I think it's, in hindsight, it seems like an obvious idea. And, the no hands approach seems very important for a new type of primitive in the space.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, I guess if I did, just to draw on that comment though, like the difference between Uniswap and Uniswap for lending is that lending, trading, there's an instant and atomic interaction between the user and the protocol. So you're taking the accumulated preferences of liquidity providers and you're focusing them on a trading market, but that trade happens atomically, like in one block. In lending, you have a persistent relationship between the user and the protocol. There's maintenance involved for every loan. So the unfortunate side effect is that our protocol is an order of magnitude more complex than Uniswap. And that's why it took so long to build. That's why we have now 9 audits. Like, it's just very hard to build a immutable complex protocol, which is why I don't think you've seen it before. So, I mean, it was really a very big endeavor that we took on. I mean, probably a little naively, but the good news is we're almost at the finish line.
Logri?
Yeah. So we've seen things like Euler pop up. There was, what was it, Tribe, or one of these guys had isolated lending markets. The usual problem with lending markets is someone has to decide what collateral is valid so that I can't manipulate some shitcoin, use it to borrow real assets when there isn't enough liquidity to support liquidating the collateral and whatnot, right? I'm curious how you've addressed that without a governance system. Because there's always, every time I've seen that in the past, it's always had a governance system behind it, deciding what pools to add, what risk, and then we've had isolated lending pools from like Euler, but then because it was a centralized team, they could patch it. One of those patches eventually self-imploded it, right?
Yep.
Right. So every time we've seen it with a centralized angle to it, it's kind of imploded as it patched one way or another. And without the ability without that governance layer, I'm not sure how you're assessing the liquidity of the tokens that you're adding as collateral to allow for a permissionless protocol.
Yeah, so you're hinting at our core innovation. So first of all, the idea that you can lend one asset and borrow a completely different one and then use that to suck real assets out of the protocol, that's a cross-margin platform. That's like Compound and Aave. You can't do that on Ajna. Every pool is by default isolated. There's only 2 assets. And one thing to note, we actually accept NFTs as collateral too. We're the only protocol that can do that. But on the other side of it, the problem isn't really the cross-margining. I mean, that's solved easily with isolated pools. The other 2 problems are the more significant one. You raised one, which is upgrades. We have no ability to upgrade the protocol. The protocol will be launched once, and that is it. And if it's a little bit inefficient, our idea is that that's okay because that inefficiency over time will compound in terms of security. So we'll have much more security in the protocol if it never changes. Those changes that get introduced to protocols, as we saw with Euler, as we've even seen with Maker and Compound in the past, that's where the majority of bugs are introduced because you don't have time to properly audit those contracts. And every time you launch something that just there's a chance it's a bug. So we took an immutable approach for that very reason. The final problem, and what our core innovation is that we don't have oracles. So all of those other pools that you mentioned, almost the entirety of the manipulations are at the Oracle level. And that's because certain assets just physically can't even have an Oracle. Like if you think about an NFT, a single NFT, you own a single Bored Ape, who is to say what the price of that single non-fungible token is? It is literally impossible. The only person that could reliably say who what price it is the person that's lending to you. They should be telling you what price they're willing to pay for it, and that is the premise of their loan. So that's what Ajna does. We have no oracles, but every lender puts in their deposit at a different price, and your loan is based off the aggregate of these prices. That's why I compare it to Uniswap v3, because in Uni v3, everybody puts in their own trading ranges. They're telling you where the market is. You don't need an external oracle to tell you what the market price is, because you just have this book of orders that are sitting there. Same thing in Ajna. Every lender puts a different deposit. The user is their own oracle. They'll tell you what they're willing to pay for the collateral in the worst case scenario. And the
Interesting. Okay, so you have a sort of a limit book of collateral.
Hey, Logri, 1 second. I think he's frozen.
Okay.
We'll give him a second here.
Hey,
Yeah, you're breaking up.
Still
Robot Greg. There you are.
I lose.
Check 1, 2, Greg. Breaking up. Let me drop him a DM. Audio breaking up, brother. Oh. And now I will sing you a song. Oh, man, we lost him. I had a couple other questions, like how the order book works here. Because I'm on.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine a Uniswap style order book, right? Like that doesn't. I can see how that would work. I'm curious whether there is a reflexive borrowing rate, or whether that's also part of what the lender puts in. Like, I'm willing to lend this asset against this other asset at this price and for this APR, and how that factors in, or whether it follows something that's like closer to how compound is, where the more borrowed the pool is by percentage of assets, you manipulate the APR, or or if lenders aren't returning in some timely fashion, what's the supply and demand mechanism to get some money back in the pool so you can withdraw your assets? Like if I have my assets outbarred based on where I was in the liquidity pool, and then someone else, and then I want to withdraw those assets, do I just have to wait for them to return it forever? Or is there a way of kind of swapping who has their liquidity borrowed and is getting paid out? You see what I'm saying? Once you get down to individual positions, how do we transfer the fact that my assets are borrowed onto someone else's being borrowed, in order to give the people that are the lenders some chance to withdraw their assets when they need to?
Greg, I see you on Discord. Are you back up and running? David, can you hear me? Do you want to answer that, or did you catch the question? I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome.
Hey, guys, what's up, JT? What's up, Logris? Yeah, I could definitely jump in. Of course, I do love seeing Greg answer the questions. He is, after all, one of the founders. But yeah, I could. Oh, and Greg said he could hear you guys, but it won't let him talk for some reason.
I think he should be clear to go. Maybe tell him to. He's on mobile, right? Maybe nuke the app and then just rejoin, because his audio should be working. It's an open channel. We don't token gate our Bored Ape parties here. Okay. Go ahead if you're still going.
So yeah, sure. There were a bunch of different questions in there. I guess maybe I could talk about the first one that I remember, the order book, just how it generalizes the prices and how the interest rate works. So lenders, they deposit their quote tokens into discrete price buckets, and the interest rate is uniform across all borrowers at any given time. So it changes in maximum every 12 hours in plus minus 10% increments. And the interest rate is eligible to change up or down based on the pool utilization. So if there is full utilization, the interest rate will just go up and up and up every 12 hours, to attract more lender liquidity so borrowers can get out. And then there was a question on...
Hold on. So it's kind of like EIP 1559, right? We have a gas market, right? And if the blocks are full, then it keeps going up by 10% every block until there's an equilibrium that's discovered, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Greg is back. I am retiring, folks.
Everybody give a round of applause for David. Great job, sir. Great job. Excellent work.
Yeah, so sorry, we have a big storm going on here, and it just nuked my power and therefore my internet, but it's back on.
How's your validators?
Unknown. So to build off what David was saying, it gets interesting with how do we define whether the block's full, right? Because we have these prices all over the book. Now, we don't even know if one is useful and one is not. By the way, am I back, or can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Sounds great.
So we have this concept of pool utilization, but it's not like other pools, because in other pool, they just say, all right, we have X in deposits and Y borrowed, so therefore it's this percent utilized. We can't say that because not every price is the same utility. If you deposit $1 million at a penny in the ETH to USD market, that liquidity is functionally useless. We can't count it towards our utilization metrics. So what we do is we decide a target utilization first. Actually, let me tell you how we calculate regular utilization. So first we say we're only counting deposits that are above a certain level. And that level that we chose is the average loans break-even price in the pool, which means that if you're lending at a level where any loan on average could be refinanced into your deposit, you're counted towards utilization. But now, how do we know the target level of utilization that we're even looking for? And this is another one of what I think is our core innovations. So we realized over time, especially with working with other lending protocols, that the best source to understand the utilization of a pool is the users themselves. What that means is that utilization is correlated to volatility. Volatility is correlated to interest rate. Interest rate is correlated to the volatility of the asset. And the volatility of the asset can be inferred by the level at which users over-collateralize their loan on average. So if you're in a market and you're in a very volatile coin and you're taking a loan, you're going to self-impose rules on yourself that say, I'm going to over-collateralize this by this much because I don't want to get liquidated. Now, if you don't do that, you're just going to get liquidated. So there's a self-fulfilling prophecy there where the good users that are setting it correctly stay in the protocol, and the ones that are not get weeded out over time. So what we do is we flip that whole equation to work backwards, and we say, what is the average collateralization of every loan in this pool? Let's use that to assume that is what that should be informing interest rates, and we'll invert it to get a target utilization. And then whenever that other utilization metric is out of whack with that target utilization, we will up or down the interest rate by 10% every 12 hours until we find equilibrium. Did any of what I just said make sense?
You lost me on A correlated to B, C, D, but I reconnected with you at the more volatile the asset, the more over collateralized the people that are lending the asset are going to demand it is, right? So if we want to, so if I create low-grade shitcoin and then I want to create a lending pool for that, no one's going to assume I have liquidity, and so they're going to say, well, I need 10x or 100x or whatever. Same thing for your board ape, right? I'm going to need some really high over collateralization that implies volatility or a lack of trust in the asset to be liquidated in a let's just say professional or quiet or orderly manner. So that much made sense. And then you're taking some type of aggregate of, okay, so we've got, let's say, 1,000 barred and 3,000 lent in a meaningful way. How do you define meaningful? Seem to be like, I still don't get how the 1 penny loans, I don't get how those are discounted or removed from the equation, or but
we only use loans above a certain price, and that price is where the average loan can be refinanced. So because that penny loan is below the average break-even price of the loans in the pool, it's not counted.
Okay, but wouldn't it affect the average still?
No, it's just completely excluded from the average.
Okay, so the average is you take the sum of all things divided by something. Wouldn't it be included in the sum of all things?
No, because the sum of all things is it's the sum of all things above the average break-even price.
Okay. I don't want to linger on it, but I'm missing something on it. I think there's two different variables going on. I'm only seeing one of them in my head. Okay, so we have some amount of asset that's borrowed, some amount of asset that's loaned. There's a collateralization ratio, and of the ones that are loaned out, those are the only ones that you're including for the calculation.
That's what's being included to determine utilization, but utilization relative to what? I'll just use an example because it's easier to follow. If you put $100 into a pool, at the 100 price bucket, and somebody comes and pledges 1 unit of collateral, they can borrow your $100. Now, if they borrow the whole $100, the pool's 100% utilized. If somebody else comes along, and by the way, that means that the average break-even price is 100 because they borrowed everything. So their break-even's 100, your loan's at 100, everything's at one bucket right now. That means that we're not going to count any deposits for utilization under 100 because they are below the average, where the average loan could be refinanced. So if you deposit at a penny, it's just going to be excluded from the utilization calculation. So that pool is 100% utilized, even if somebody comes in and puts $1 million at a penny. Now, if that person only borrowed $50, that means that the pool is 50% utilized because they've taken half of yours. And if somebody comes in and puts in another $100 deposit at 50, now it's 25% utilized because we're going to count that because that loan could theoretically be refinanced down to 50.
Storm
again.
It's the back end of the storm. That's where the tornado is. God bless Greg.
Oh, the example was helping, at least to me.
Still breaking up a little bit.
I'm back. I'm sorry.
There you are. There you are.
I think you're back, Greg.
Had beautiful weather all week, so bad timing with the storm.
It's all good. Yeah, Logri was saying that was helpful.
Yeah, so I guess just to put a point on it, if you could still hear me.
Yep.
There's this cycle that we have where the interest rate, that should tell you something about the pool. That should say how much we're asking you to over collateralize, because that's based indirectly off of the over collateralization, which is informing how we're going to decide where the target utilization is. And the reason we use that for target utilization is we look at it as the amount of spare deposits that need to remain in the pool, because it'll give us a measure of how difficult it'll be to attract a new deposit should one pull out. So if you see an asset that is having a 90% average 90% loan to value, we're only going to keep 10% of the deposits idle in the pool, because our logic is that for every 10% increase in the interest rate, it should be incrementally less difficult to replace that deposit because the asset's not as volatile and the lenders aren't taking as much risk. If you invert that and you say this thing has an average 10% loan to value, so it's extraordinarily volatile, we're going to say we want to keep 90% of the deposits idle, because to replace the deposits that are getting used right now, it's going to take a huge increase in interest rates, and that's going to take a long time to do. And it's going to be a lot more friction to find that equilibrium.
Got it. Okay,
Greg, just so you know, Logri the Bard, you guys should friend each other. He runs a neat little blog site and more called tokenomicsexplained.com. He's here every week, and he's just well versed in this stuff that you're dealing with, so he might be a good person to ping every now and then,
Oh, awesome. I'll throw you a friend request.
Yeah. Put him in your back pocket. He's a gem. He's one of the OG Mavericks, and he's just a great contributor. And he comes on here to ask all the real questions. I'm more about like what kind of barbecue sauce you like. I do have a question. Unless somebody else in the audience wants to chime in, I don't want to take over if anybody has anything real quick. Okay. So I'm looking at the app.ajna.finance page, and I see WETH USDC pools. What does the Ajna burned in this auction mean? What is the Ajna burned in auction?
Yeah, so we have a token called Ajna. Like I mentioned, it's used to vote in this quarterly grant process.
Okay.
But the utility of Ajna in the system is that it's kind of like an internal currency. It's the only currency that a pool will accept to purchase its reserves. Over time, every pool, if it's utilized, will accumulate reserves. It accumulates that in three ways: from origination fees, deposit fees that we charge if you provide meaningless liquidity, and from net interest margin. And then there's also some other vectors where it's like we collect some income if you post a bad liquidation bond, but that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down. Point is, there's fees that accumulate. These fees actually have to accumulate to make the game theory of the system work. If you give anybody a zero friction loop to loop capital, they're going to manipulate you. So we needed to make it economically expensive to try to manipulate the pool. Means we need to collect fees, and it can't go back to another actor in the system. There were two options. It can get burned, or we could use it for something useful. So what we decided to do was create the Ajna token, and now anybody, once a pool has accumulated reserves, can trigger a Dutch auction that auctions off those reserves for Ajna tokens. Those Ajna tokens, once they're used to bid in that auction, are irretrievably burned. So the Ajna supply should only go down as long as pools are getting used.
Okay, that's helpful. Hey, I see Dujo here from Palisades. That group likes to play around in the sandbox of stuff like this. I also see James from Octant in here. Hello, James. Good to have you. Greg,
I've got a quick question.
Go ahead. A-word.
Yeah, you said you guys were the only protocol that were going to accept NFTs as collateral. How are you going about evaluating those? Are you going through floor price? Like, just given such the speculative nature, how are you guys arriving at your evaluation? Is that something you're trying to innovate on?
So that's the beauty of the Ajna Protocol. We don't try to evaluate anything. It's actually all based on the lenders themselves. So you create a pool, for instance, for, let's say, Bored Apes versus ETH. All you have to do is wait till lenders come and populate the pool with bids, and then you could borrow those bids. So there is no oracle, there is no assessment, there's no governance. It's just totally user to user transactions.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
696 just showed up. Good to see you. Any last questions from the peanut gallery? Now's your chance before we move on.
I'll reminisce a moment, not exactly a question, but it's kind of like rye is to die, right? It's using the sort of beautiful feedback loop math that we see from things like the Ethereum gas market, or from not exactly stablecoin protocols, but governance-free stablecoin protocols. And it's doing that to lending markets where historically you've needed governance in order to establish what's the price something should be liquidated at, what's the fair interest rate, what the interest rate curve should be as a factor of utilization. They took all the things like they went through a checklist of everything that was a centralized governance decision of Compound and Aave, and they just kind of went down and solved it with math, right? And that allows them to have the first truly decentralized lending protocol of any type. The other ones that we've seen have been very peer-to-peer, and like there's a single contract, I put up this and it's going to be available for borrow. We saw this in like 2017. Those had a terrible user experience, trying to navigate a bunch of like individual contract offers and find the individual position that you're going to borrow from was not as good a user experience as pooled liquidity. But pooled liquidity has come with the risks that were solved by governance until Ajna. Now Ajna's come in and try and solve those with cryptographic math like we have for all the good tokenomics designs that we see from 2020. We try to solve things increasingly with math and less with governance. And now they're layering on an Ajna token onto that is what I'm hearing. And I didn't really get to the bottom of what was the purpose and use of that beyond cash grab to fund initial development or perpetual development.
Yes. So first of all, you should tweet the first part of your statement because that was great. Much better than I explained.
I'm gonna write a post, so you're gonna get more than a tweet.
There you go.
Okay, so back to the token. That's actually always been there. The reason it's there again is because we have to accumulate fees. The protocol does not work with the accumulation of those fees, and they cannot accumulate to any other actor in the system. If they accumulate to lenders or to borrowers or to liquidators, there is a way to manipulate the pool. So we had two choices. We could burn those fees, or we could give them to a third group that is not a direct beneficiary of the pool itself, but represents kind of like an aggregate ecosystem participant. We chose that because it's a way of taking value that otherwise would get burned.
Why do you have to collect fees? Wouldn't the system just be more efficient with lower interest rates if there wasn't an extra fee involved?
No, like I'll give you an example. So let's say that we're looking at the origination fee. If you didn't have that, because our interest rates are based off of utilization, there would be no cost to do large flash loan borrows. So you can come in and you can just borrow the whole pool, and then it looks like it's 100% utilized for the purpose of the calculation, but it's not. So we had to insert an economic friction there so that it becomes exponentially more expensive for you to manipulate the pool as interest rates go up.
Makes sense.
And if we gave that back to lenders, you could actually just manipulate it and retrieve it on the other side. So we couldn't give it back to lenders.
Okay, that makes sense. So you need to have some friction in the system to prevent at least some of the more exploitive. Basically, think of the audits required that there were some fees in the system to prevent the exploitive behaviors from being profitable at scale.
Exactly. If there's, it's necessary intentional friction, and that friction manifests itself in the form of a fee. That fee can either be burned or given to an unassociated party. We chose unassociated party.
Okay, yeah, unassociated, but by that you probably mean the team has like 40% of it, right? Like,
I mean unassociated from the pool's perspective. So that group does not have they're not the ones that are either benefiting or receiving the fee in the pool itself. Like, we look at the pool as its own isolated ecosystem. In the pool, there's three actors that you could consider internal. There's lenders, there's borrowers, and there's liquidators. And if you give it to any one of those actors, you actually remove the efficacy of the friction because they can recapture it somewhere else. Whereas if you give it to an external actor, like when I say external actor, I meant unassociated party is just not one of those three actors. It could have been the Ethereum Foundation. It could have been a charity. It could have been, the burn address. It just can't go to one of those three.
I was going to say, it could have gone to Gitcoin grants or something, but then you would have had like a single privileged, and who decides who it's kind of like the same decision they had to make with ETH gas being burned. People were like, maybe we should siphon some of the fees to give it to the Ethereum Foundation. And someone's like, well, I don't want to enshrine the Ethereum Foundation into the Ethereum protocol. I don't want to enshrine Gitcoin as like the imagine it's captured and is evil later, right? This is a protocol that can't be patched. So this creates a token that gives you a market-based solution for where the profit should go. If people think it should go to Bitcoin, then we can buy the Ajna token. They can stream the proceeds over to Gitcoin. If they decide to change their mind later, that's on them. But it's a free market approach rather than enshrining it into the protocol, especially a protocol that can't be patched. It's a very dangerous decision to do.
You nailed it. And also, we have this on-chain grants program where every quarter, we have a treasury that we sidelined, a smart contract with 30% of the Ajna supply. Every quarter, it distributes 3% of that 30%. So, and the way that 3% is distributed is based off of a vote that uses a square root voting system, where it will basically let you, as the Ajna token holder, allocate your pro rata share of the budget to any and all of 10 proposals. So we take that value that's coming out of the pools and we try to put it into a somewhat intelligent direction where it can continue to build the Ajna ecosystem. Even though it can't update the core protocol, it can do peripheral things that hopefully make the Ajna pools more useful.
Yeah, DeFi, like to be a successful DeFi protocol, you need core integrations, right? And that often requires greasing the wheels in some way, unfortunately. So that makes sense.
Thank you.
Excellent. Anybody else? I just noticed a user joined with the name Untouchable 2K, and I'm wondering if that's a meme based on Ethereum's price with the Bitcoin logo and all. That's pretty good. I have to admit, that's pretty good. Well, Greg, I know you have a busy schedule. You're more than welcome to hang around. I know you said you have another meeting coming up. And so I just want to give you an opportunity. If there's any, give us your socials, give us what's next. How can people reach out to you? And then we're going to move on to the Daily Doots.
Yeah, sure. I'm G_DIP on Twitter. I have no idea what my Discord handle is, so just ping me on Twitter, and or go in the list, I guess. And how you can interact with Ajna going forward. Just look for our redeployment on Summerfy, which should be coming in a few weeks, and feel free to use the protocol. And thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and David, if you want to hang out and with the Mavericks, and Greg, if you have to leave, just drop off any time. But what we're going to do, and we always invite our celebrity guests to come in as color commentators. So for the next section of the show, I read Reddit so you don't have to. And then we open up the floor for a reflection on the week that was in the Ethfinance daily threads. And this is all very subjective. I have not read a single one of these. The A-word picks these out every week, and then we just start at the top and work our way down. So minimal gravitas. If you open up dailydoots.com, excuse me, my voice is a little shaky, so I may be abbreviating some of this. Minimal Gravitas has some thoughts after the community pushback against Lido's Arbitrum DAO proposal. Thoughts on the victory over Lido and Arbitrum's STIP round. Apologies for a bit of a brain dump. Today, we should celebrate, be grateful, and allow ourselves the happy vibes of the good old side winning. The good side winning. We've won a battle, but as I said a couple of weeks ago, this is going to be a long war. Tomorrow, if you harassed a delegate to get them to vote or to change their vote or whatever, then reach back out to them over the next few days. Everybody likes it when you say thank you, and everyone prefers it when they don't feel like you forget about them after you've got what you've wanted. Next week, with Lido losing here, being vampire attacked, and the threat they pose being discussed in multiple Ethereum podcasts recently, it's a good time to press the advantage, up the social pressure, which it turns out can be quite useful after all, by calling out their attempts at spin and damage control. Hanniabu has set a great example of doing this. Their representative who proposed the Arbitrum request was on Twitter claiming the results were razor tight. So don't let them control the narrative. In a dogfight, one of the ways you beat an opponent is by overwhelming their cognitive load. Give them too many things to think about to be able to effectively counter all of them. Lido has a lot to think about at the moment, so we'd be throwing away an advantage if we let up the pressure too much. Number 4, the future. We need to get more coordinated. We got delegates in lots of DAOs, but can we find more? Can we start compiling resources of delegates that might not be a part of Ethfinance, but can be relied upon to recognize the threat Lido represents if they come knocking for funds and integrations? User Web of Trust has discussed the possibility of changes to constitutions that would prevent these kinds of funding requests for Lido even coming to the proposal stage. Ooh, what would that look like, and what DAOs might take it up? How can we keep respected Ethereum media discussing this? Obviously, some members like user Evan Van Ness are already working on that. I'm sure we can try to keep the focus on for some others too. The Bankless guys used to frequent here sometimes and have had a recent episode with Danny Ryan, as well as promoted Diva's vampire attack. Let's praise and promote those positive actions and encourage them to do more. I'm going to leave it at this. So Minimal Gravitas, excellent post. Thank you so much. And shout out to Hanniabu and the rest of the idea makers on how best to keep this DAO proposal stuff. Stay on top of it. Go back and thank your proposers. If anybody has any comments, go ahead. All right. Tricky Troll adjusts the personal reputations of delegators. Governance token holders everywhere, particularly ARB holders or even Optimism and other governance token holders who delegate. Now is a good time to ask yourself if you are happy with who you have delegated your tokens to. After the recent Lido art proposal, some names I once knew have either gone up or down in my personal reputation. Tricky Troll's got a Rolodex. It may be worth checking all protocols which you delegate your tokens on, and check your delegate's track record and change or speak up if necessary. Changes of who I... Wow, he name drops here. Here we go. Changes of who I see as reputation, the reputation gain going in the right direction. L2 Beat, Griff Green, David Mihal, Bob Rossi, like he isn't already top tier. Amen to that, Bob Rossi. And basically all of the university blockchain clubs, Princeton, Cornell, and Michigan. Lost, people who have lost reputation, according to Tricky Troll. Chainlink God and Galaxy, Galxe. Name and shame and praise, baby. Who did I miss? Thank you, Tricky Troll. Rooftop Porta Potty, my freaking favorite username ever, I think. Updates their project Preservation DAO. And I saw Rooftops in the house over here on the sidebar. It's always good to see your face, even if it's behind the door of a porta potty. Piggybacking on all the recent discussions regarding DAOs here, I aim to provide another perspective. 2 years ago, I resolved to, along with the invaluable work of other ETH financiers, launch Preservation DAO. Our aim is to preserve habitat by purchasing land of significant ecological value using funds generated by on-chain donations. The landscape of Ethereum has obviously changed drastically since then, but our ideas and general plans were compiled by the great user Harag and can be found at github.com/preservation DAO /preservation DAO. We were quickly met with a wide array of challenges and obstacles. Some of these issues have likely been solved to some extent by this point. I will assume that any interested members have read the linked GitHub page. The following will be an attempt to address some of the challenges and detailed solutions where available. Number one, I personally lack the funds necessary to get this project off the ground. Unfortunately, this has not changed. Number two, we felt it wrong to launch an environmentally oriented project on a proof of work chain. Post-merge, this is a non-issue. However, we may still want to choose an L2 to avoid high gas fees. Number three, I spent quite a long time trying to find an appropriate law firm to help create a land-owning on-chain 501c3 organization to no avail. Rooftop Porta Potty, get with the HodlerCon guys and go with the, Wyoming. There's a Wyoming attorney that helped us set up our LLC and we are a DAO. So the HodlerCon people, I'm one of them. It's WyomingLawLLC.com, maybe. I'm not sure, but they may be able to point you in the right direction. Whatever the case, I think Wyoming's going to be a good jurisdiction to explore those ideas. Number four, ensuring that the meat space treasury has no ability to embezzle funds is paramount, and I don't see a clear solution. Number five, with non-transferable ERC20s or NFTs that is distributed to donators who may then vote for lands to purchase, how do we mitigate Sybil attacks? Number six, ensuring that qualified contributors are able to make their donations tax exempt is a priority. This project must not be limited to properties within the U.S. Number seven, what assets should we accept as donations? There are many downsides to market selling ETH in order to purchase property. I implore any interested ETH financiers to contribute in any way possible. I would love to see this comment receive significant traction. Otherwise, Preservation DAO can be reshelved until we have a clear path to success laid out. Rooftop Porta Potty is your contributor on that. Reach out to him. He's on the chat here if you have any ideas. User 696 shares that 696. Your ears must be burning, dude, because you're at 67 on the Doots list, and I'm trying to figure out how to do a celebration when you get to 69. Okay, it's just third grade humor. 696 ETH shares the potential that JP Morgan sees in this space. Oh, interesting. JP Morgan Onyx on digital identity and Web3. They have a video and they're doing a 4-article series. Well, that's chump change for Logri the Bard. The first one is called The Big Shift, was released back in 2022. Let's see what they understand. New web, new rules, new verification methods that are more secure, trustworthy, and easier to use. prior to the blockchain, and even so far, the digital online world has been copying the physical world, leading to many issues around identity pieces, bullet points, unsecured communication, inefficient and dangerous practices, stolen identities, and much more. Web3 introduces new possibilities. JP clearly understand how Web 1 changed the world through e-commerce and how Web 2 sparked innovation through the rise of social networks and user-generated content. What about Web 3? It brings the pieces of a decentralized system, digital ownership of your data, ownership of your assets. It flips the relationship between companies and users, and many more possibilities. It adds more cross-platform utility, adds provenance, adds immutability. That means Web 3 can bring another magnitude of innovation, streamlining online business models, less friction for the user, saving time, making proving easier, more secure and private, reducing costs, and unlocking more liquidity faster and transparent public services. For all of that to work, we need to update our digital identity. That's where decentralized digital identity comes with a range of benefits: sovereignty, security, immutable, and irrefutable. While all of this sounds good, it's a very complex challenge to bring all the pieces together. This leads to their second article, Assessing Web3's Identity Building Blocks, was published in 2023. First of all, they are reiterating their points from the first article, shocker. But now they are getting a bit more specific and tangible, starting with an overview of the digital identity landscape and highlighting 4 essential building blocks. And the article goes on from there. This was a really big breakdown by 696 regarding JP Morgan. That is a fat link. You should check it out. Thanks so much for contributing. Damn, dude. Benito 2330. Benito 2330 has been raging lately on the Doots, making the Doots list a double kill 2 weeks in a row and a double weekly double kill 2 weeks in a row. I think he was on twice last week. Wow. Benito 2030 and Juan Kistine instead of Frankenstein. Juan. Oh my gosh, this is a great username. Wankenstein shares their biggest, I'm sorry, I get cracked up over these usernames, share their biggest learnings about investing and their resulting strategies. Benito 2030. This is one of my biggest learnings. It's so easy to spend ETH in a bull market. So many cool narratives. So many people making a quick buck. Yeah, cries and OMG and funfair. And to be fair, you should be experimenting because that's how you learn. Still crying in funfair. But you should also keep in mind that every buy diminishes your ETH stack. Still crying in OMG and funfair. Your long-term bet, the asset that will not go to zero next bear. So I think a budget for experiments works well. Don't spend more than the budget and you're good. Very well said. Wankenstein. Around 3 years ago, I realized this. Everyone wants your BTC and ETH. ICOs want your ETH. Scammers want your ETH. Exchanges have BTC and ETH reserves. Lending platforms stake your ETH. DEXs want your ETH liquidity. Just hold BTC and ETH and forget about it. That's probably the most boring strategy, but also the most rewarding and less stressful. My plan for 2025 is to convert all the 2017 and 2021 shitcoins into BTC, ETH, USDC, and maybe another token I want to bet on. Very good sage advice. Short and sweet, to the point. Benito 2030 once again wants to make Ethfinance a governance powerhouse. Okay. Here we go. Let's make Ethfinance a governance powerhouse. In the light of the Lido thread and their ARB requests, this community has shown a brilliant reaction, no doubt. The topic was heavily discussed, delegates coordinated, and a lot of great posts have been made. Minimal Gravitas made this post last week, and I would like to add some thoughts with regards to the future. I completely agree that we need to coordinate even more than ever before. Some assumptions before I start outlining my thoughts. Bullet points. This community has a lot of smart and thoughtful people. God bless America. That is correct. This community cares about ETH's values and has developed a strong sense of community and belonging over the years. Amen. We have existing infrastructure to coordinate, which is a strong foundation. Happens to be Reddit right now, but it could be something off Reddit as well. I don't know, maybe Discord too. This community owns sizable stacks of governance token, mostly airdrop, some bought on the open markets. We shouldn't focus just on Lido, but be agnostic to be able to respond to all threats Ethereum is and will be facing in the future. So how can we coordinate? Step 1, analysis identification. And then it goes on from there. Examples, member X, member Y for L2s. DeFi is this group of member Zs. Staking, member A, member B. Like different types of colors of members are like focused on the things that matter the most, and then we delegate to them. Step 2, coordination and delegation. This step will usually be helpful after a token launch or airdrop. It formalizes step 1 after a token launch announcement. We try to understand our power, so try to get a feeling for our power by estimating our token allocation. This will be fun because it will be so hard to estimate lurkers and their allocations. Yeah, well said. And it goes on from there. Step 3, collection feedback. I think we have a big advantage over other delegates. We can crowdsource feedback, or in other words, your delegates will usually understand your position because you posted or upvote those comments that summarize your position in the best way possible, and will best case act based on the feedback. So what should the process look like? I think there are 2 possible ways. Delegate driven. The delegate will usually be aware of important topics, discussions, and votes. They could either publish their position on certain topic in the daily, or they could ask for feedback if they have no idea or position yet. Okay, so it goes on from there. Step 4 is reporting. I think it would be beautiful if there was some kind of reporting back to the community. This could be a summary of the votes of the past, feedback the delegate got in the process, and so on. Step 5, evaluation and redelegation. Let's see. The last step is evaluating the delegate's action and potentially redelegation. In a best case scenario, the evaluation just results in nothing. People are happy and feel that the delegate did a great job and represented this community well. But we obviously have to accept that this won't all be true all the time. Redelegation could happen if a member goes inactive, votes or acts against the community's values or interests. To be honest, I don't know how often this should be done, maybe once a year, and whenever there are big decisions, ? In the end, this is what some members have been documenting the past couple of days with external delegates and changes in reputation. I'm wondering, and some of the brains in this room might be able to chime in on this, if that Billy Lukey's project intuition.systems might be able to help with this. And then the second thought I had is discussion might need to just be a Discord thread that then gets linked in the Ethfinance daily, right? I mean, at some point, I think that sometimes the threaded conversations of Discord are really handy at like keeping track, and then just make a new thread for a longer discussion. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on this. I'm going to take a drink of water real quick.
So what I will say is that I don't know if you guys have noticed, but recently there's kind of been more of a push against Lido, which kind of reared its head with Lido's recent proposal. But for a few weeks now, behind the scenes, something similar to this has already been cooking up. And I have been wrapping a few of the Ethfinance members into it. And I expect that there should be a public announcement in a few weeks, maybe like a month, hopefully before DevConnect, which is mid-November. But at least that's the goal. But very, very similar initiative that I'm very excited about, which will kind of go hand in hand with stateofeth.com that I'm developing.
Freaking legend. Man, and I'm, as being like a content guy, God, I wish in a perfect world of obscene personal wealth, I could just make update videos, once when they're needed for things like this, and try to rally with some visual content, and put some numbers on the screen and a voice to what's being proposed, and talk about all these things and just kind of help in that way. That'd be kind of fun. But yeah, there's only so many hours of the day. And there's no more hairs on my head, so I mean that part's done. I'm not going to lose any hair over it, so that's good. I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to chime in on this. Hanny, you rock, but we all knew that. All right, very good. Web of Trust shares Vitalik's message to those watching his every action. Poor guy. Quote, regular reminder, if you see an article saying Vitalik sends, this amount of ETH to an exchange, it's not actually me selling. It's almost always me donating to some charity or nonprofit or other project. And the recipient selling because, well, they have to cover expenses. I haven't sold ETH for personal gain since 2018. There you go. Mad respect for Vitalik. All the on-chain alert on Twitter of him selling and causing panic while it's just all a donation to charity. Yeah. I always wonder, I think his needs are met. I don't think he just all of a sudden needs $1 million right now. I always found those kind of laughable. Hanniabu has a call to action, speaking of which. It's time to promote decentralized LSTs to be added to EigenLayer next. And there is a link to a tweet. Here's how you get involved. A snapshot of all LST holders listed above and need to get added, and the current restakers will be taken on October 20th. Number 2, each wallet gets 1 vote for every 1 USD worth of tokens staked. LST teams will showcase their merits, declare pre-commitments, and campaign over the next week. Oh, wow. Campaigns on Twitter. Aren't those fun? LSTs that accumulate more than 15,000 ETH and votes will be added to the EigenLayer for restaking in the subsequent months, added by the number of votes from highest to lowest. The key dates, October 20th is a snapshot. Submissions by LSTs, October 20th through the 25th. Voting by LST holders, October 25th to November 1st. Sorry, my throat screwed up. LSTs currently included, and whether they are decentralized or not, WBETH, SFRX ETH, SETH 2, SWEETH, Anchor ETH, LS ETH, MEV ETH, ETHX, VETH, and OETH. There you go. It seems the one we should support the most is Stakewise is SETH 2. So if anyone has that, you should set a reminder to vote starting October 25th. Unfortunately, there's only a supply of 85,000 ETH since their old V2 implementation has been paused. So there's limited voting power. You can learn more at dailydoots.com. Thank you, Hanniabu. Anything you want to add to that, sir? All right.
No, just that I think this is important because restaking, I believe, will be another centralization vector eventually. So I think it's important to get as many decentralized staking integrations in there as possible to help take away from Lido's participation, as well as other centralized providers.
All
So
right.
if you have already participated in the LST restaking program and you have restaking points, then you will be able to vote, for whichever you want. But I would recommend for Stakewise, but if you have restaking points, you won't need the Stakewise LST in order to vote.
Okay. All right. Thank you. As always, Cryptos and Bloods. That's an old username, by the way. They've been around for a long time. User, the Cryptos and the Bloods calls out Uniswap for their recent bold move. What have we done to the uni fee stuff? Have we done the I don't know. Have we done the new uni fee stuff? I don't know why I can't read this sentence correctly. How Uniswap Labs, the VC funded company, is adding a 0.15% fee to the primary front end it controls, as well as their wallet app? ? It's 3x the long awaited fee switch for uni token holders, going entirely to benefit the company. And they have announced it the day after they pushed through a vote approving $50 million in funding by dumping the Uni token for the labs company by the Uniswap Foundation /DAO. with zero explanation of what it is for or what it'll be used for. Just an opaque $46 million for 2 years, please. We'll use it well, pretty please. It's just incredibly brazen. Uniswap is a fantastic product, but my God, the incentive misalignment between the team and VCs who want to drive value to the company equity, which they own more of, and which has fewer regulatory hassles. And token holders is crazy. The difference between them and the token holders is crazy. The team and VCs own a ton of Uni, of course, but they own more of the company and would prefer to monetize the company, especially since it doesn't have regulatory hassles for them like the token. But they will use their voting power to block any attempts to turn the fee switch on for Uniswap holders to avoid aforesaid regulatory hassles for them, all while disingenuously talking about how Uni holders can vote to turn on the fee switch if they want. Why do people hold Uni anymore after the relentless screwing of token holders by the team, VCs, and company? Like I said, Uniswap is a great product, but the team, VC, and founders leave awful tastes in the mouth with their greed and screwing of token holders. Also, there were some very unpleasant allegations about Hayden screwing over early investors and people who helped him bootstrap and not giving them the equity they were promised last year. I think there was a long Twitter thread by Rick Burton, maybe. I think I need to emphasize that we only heard Rick Burton's side of the story, and every story has two sides, but it all sounded quite plausible and in line with the kind of ethos that Uniswap Labs has now. Well, today I learned something. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that. Yeah, go ahead, James. I see you unmuted.
I was just going to say, I've been watching on the sidelines with all this because my friend just got a job at Uniswap, and he was wondering, he came over from a different Web3 project that's like not really deep in the Ethereum ecosystem, and so he was pinging me a lot about different things going on, and then all of a sudden this happened. I was like, oh. Because I don't really pay too much attention to what's going on with Uniswap, but obviously, when a bunch of stuff is making noise, it catches your eye. I just think it's really interesting seeing the decision making, and I'm wondering, like you said, like why would you hold that governance token if it doesn't really have any power? If the voting control over it is done by people who only want what's best for the company rather than the protocol and the project.
Yeah, and if they're giving themselves even more fee revenue, they can turn that into more I mean, it's like just a feedback loop of value capture.
That one.
Say that again.
I think we all know the answer to that one.
Yeah.
Like why they bother having the token.
Yeah.
And before we move on.
So I wanted to ask if oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, sorry. Go ahead. You go.
I was just going to ask because I know there's some people that are in the know here. Like if you obviously there's like Sushi Swap and a few others. Are there any that anyone here like highly recommends that maybe I go and research? Because I'll be the first to admit that just out of laziness, I've been using Uniswap more than I probably should have after this news came out. But would love any recommendations on any great experiences anybody else has here.
There's DeFi Llama Swap.
Yeah, we see a lot of Cow Swap recommended on Reddit. That comes up several times a week.
Okay.
If you haven't used that before, it's signature based. So you're going to sign a message, you're going to sign approval, but you're not going to sign a transaction to actually force it through. So it's going to be pull based, not push based, which will be a little unfamiliar to you, but it works just fine. Basically, Cow Swap stands for coincidence of wants. So it's just a matter of person A wants to swap A for B, person B wants to swap B for A. They have a settlement, and occasionally they pull all the assets of everyone that has signed up for those A to B, B to A, and they move all the assets around and redistribute them, right? It's a different paradigm for it, but it works pretty well. Outside of that, so you have different exchanges on the lending side or on the deposit side that are going to get capital efficiency from your assets in different ways. So if you're just in the swap market, that's not going to be very interesting to you. and you're mostly going to go to where the liquidity is highest. And for those two, it's just, if you look at TVL, it's going to be Uniswap and Curve. Now you have DEX aggregators that sit on as a layer on top of that. Things like 1inch sometimes are going to take their own fee for that service, and sometimes they won't. Cow is kind of like a DEX aggregator in that regard. So it's a feeless DEX aggregator that works on a pull rather than a push system. I'd suggest you look into that. Outside of that, I'd say Curve. If you just use the Curve.fi directly, that's really good for like-kind swaps. So if you need to swap like, I don't know, Curve USD for USDC or DAI to USDC or whatever, right? It's an exchange that's optimized for these kind of like time swaps. It also has a Curve V2 pool in there, which again has advantages for the people who are LPs. So Uniswap, it's got this system where you compress liquidity in order to get more of the assets that are on the exchange are closer to the strike points. And that gets you higher utilization, and the fees you get come from utilization. But as you compress liquidity, you also compress IL, or what Uniswap calls impermanent loss. What Curve V2 does instead, which is interesting, is it has a volatility oracle in there. So as the amount of volume hits the curve, if you will, the depth chart, it actually withdraws liquidity, so it's not traded until stability is established, and then it redeposits it. And this means that less IL is incurred while still having more of the assets closer to the strike price on the average market. So right, which is a very interesting kind of system. You've seen how DeFi moves. When it wants to move, it really moves, right?
Right.
And so if you have your assets really close to the strike price when that's happening, you're just going to you're going to have sold it for a lot less than you probably could have gotten if you'd sold it with a more DCA out type of approach. So Curve V2 has this kind of volatility oracle built into it to allow for volatile assets to be on the Curve exchange while minimizing the amount of IL. And that's one thing that's competitive advantage, right? Balancer does the Uniswap style thing, but instead of having a volatility oracle, they get the capital efficiency by compressing liquidity and then also by pushing the inactive assets into lending markets and whatnot. So the stuff that's far away from the strike price is not likely to be traded actually can get deposited over to Compound or Aave or somewhere else where it's earning yield through an alternative means rather than being used for trading liquidity. And that gives, again, for depositors, this translates to higher APR at the additional, the risk of smart contract risk. So you just have this bubbling space, the underlying dexes, but they're mostly fighting on the who is going to treat liquidity providers the best, not on who is going to have the best swap experience. The swap experience is mostly kind of outsourced over to DEX aggregators, or where all the volume comes from isn't from people like you. It's from people that are like taking data between centralized exchanges, right? And then they're withdrawing it and they're doing atomic arbitraging and acting on the kind of spring system of when prices move, it creates this ripple of transactions across the blockchain as that new price has to be established on each of the various DEXs, each of the various pools where that asset exists, and then all the pools linked to those get slight adjustments, right? So the reason that like Ethereum gas is at 5 or whatever right now is because the price is so freaking boring. If we had to jump up to 2,000 or 3,000 in the span of a couple months, yeah, you'd start to see 60, 70 way because there's so much arbitrage profit opportunity there. It creates transaction demand, right?
Okay.
So long-winded answer, covering many different bases.
No, I took notes. So thanks for running through that.
In the chat, Treebeard has mixed reviews on the post. Generally agree with uni token holders having no real power, but I'm not necessarily opposed to a front-end fee. I'm opposed to a protocol level token holder fee very much. And Rooftop Porta Potty replied, I gave uni money yesterday out of laziness. David says, what do you think of matcha.xyz? I was using that for a while. I've used that before too. Treebeard, I like matcha and 0x, use it fairly often, but limit what exchanges it routes through. Rooftop, you're paying an aggregator fee, or is that wrong? Matcha doesn't, Treebeard says Matcha doesn't take a fee for regular swaps. They may for limit orders, I'm not sure. And goes on from there. And Kraftwerk says, good stream, guys. James, while you're here, what's your update with Octant? He's on a call. He must be calling. There
Yeah,
he is.
sorry, I had another window open.
Yeah, what's
we know there's an update.
What's the update on Octant?
Update is that we have 330 ETH up for grabs right now between users and the matching pool. The matching pool is a lot bigger than user rewards. I think it's like around 229 ETH for public goods projects, and then on top of that, anything that the users decide to donate will obviously go to them as well. At the moment, I think Roadkey and Protocol Guild are crushing it, and then it starts to slowly dwindle further down the list you go. But really happy to see Protocol Guild. Yeah, Octant.app. So the projects get sorted between or from highest to lowest in donations that they're currently receiving, including what the leverage matching pool is adding to it. So Protocol Guild didn't do too well in our community building event back in July and August, but really happy to see that they are doing a lot better this round, because Octant wouldn't happen without it. So it definitely should be up there on the list for sure. But yeah, excited overall. Looks like the rewards are getting distributed fairly well, and how I would have predicted it turning out. There's a couple projects that caught my eye, but the big thing I think for us is the bugs were minimal. We were anticipating probably having more fires to put out than actually happened. So kudos to our dev team.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey,
things seem to be going really well.
If you have any leads on any of these projects you think would be a good fit for this podcast, I'd love to talk to them.
Oh man, I'm connected with all of them. So
shocker.
Yeah, let's chat maybe once the Doots is over for sure.
Excellent. Okay.
And, this runs until November 2nd, right? You have to vote.
Yeah.
Claim.
Yeah. So the window is 2 weeks long. Like you said, November 2nd it closes. You can change your allocation as many times as you want. Like if projects that are doing well, that had your donations, maybe don't need it, and you just want to take donations for yourself, you're more than welcome to do that too. But yeah, we made this to where it's gasless, so you can change it as many times as you want, just being aware that there are projects that are generally going to be teetering on the right on the threshold of getting that minimum funding that's required or not. And so it's a little bit of a game that leadership is interested to seeing, like how it'll play out towards the end of the window with some projects on the brink of receiving all, something or nothing.
Very good. Very good. All right. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I was going to say thanks for the shout out.
Yeah, I had seen something trickle across the front page of the. I think you maybe have I don't know if it's you or a team member, but yeah, you guys are always welcome to post in the daily or wherever you see fit on Ethfinance, and it's always good to have you around, man.
Let me ask, is it better to post on the daily or
daily,
just like a general post? Daily? Okay,
daily,
sure.
but it's not you're not gonna get in trouble if you guys have like a lengthy update of some kind. Put it on the front page, but then just throw it in the daily also.
Okay.
A short blurb in the daily, a longer blurb as a top level, but we'll take all that top level action too. We don't have Beer Belly Fat Ass running the top level stuff as much. We used to have two users. Sorry, this is going back in history. Twigwam and Beer Belly Fat Ass religiously would post news articles that were coming across their feeds and filling up the front page of ETH Trader back then. And then they just kind of trickled off. I'm still friends with them in back channels, but they're no longer doing anything on Reddit really. And so it'd be nice. This goes for anybody. I even told Evan Van Ness, like, take clips of your article, your different headlines if you want to populate our front page. Because right now it's like, it's not a good look. If I have to manually remove all the dailies, and sometimes I don't get around to it for a few days. So we have you can look at the front page of the sub right now, and we have yesterday's daily is like probably in the top 5 position. I haven't even looked, so just something to think about. And tell all those people and those other teams too, welcome to drop by, give us updates on what they're doing. We always like to showcase development. I think some people feel like it's spammy. It's not spammy if you're doing an update. Think of it as like a press release. What's spammy is like just oversharing stuff constantly. And, it'd be nice to have that happy balance again, because like it seems like we had regular contributors that were dropping, token airdrop information, governance token information, ICOs and everything. Well, some of it was spammy. But like, you guys have funding rounds going on, come in. There's no problem you guys giving an update in a list and throwing it in each day's daily. I have no problem with that. I mean, that's really just like essential for, what a newspaper would have, right? Like a daily newspaper. And it's like, you guys are like, you got a little thing. Here's the Octane update. Here's the leaderboard and whatever. So it's up to you guys, whatever stomach or appetite you have. And if the moderators push back on that, then I will take that into consideration. But yeah, I mean, if you got a big thing dropping out, or even little small things, we got less than 200 comments in yesterday's daily. I don't think we're going to piss anybody off by having something to read,
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for running through that. I wasn't sure like what the consensus or best practices were. So
yeah,
feel a lot better about that now.
Yeah. Plus it's like solely focused on public goods. I mean, hello, that's like the ethos of what we're about. Maybe not all of it's public goods. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying you're helping to fund development in the ecosystem for different projects that are just trying to hustle in a bear market, trying to survive.
I hear you, man. Let's chat after the Doots as well.
Sure. Let's do our final one. Looks like Superfizz. Superfizz self-examines Ethereum's current situation. My lights just flickered. Hopefully power doesn't go out. Self-examination is critical for long-term success. Everyone has been in the dumps about the ratio, but instead of lamenting it, we ought to be asking, what can we do to improve Ethereum? Holy cow, John F. Kennedy. Maybe it's not our fault. Doesn't matter. Maybe Bitcoin just had the first mover advantage. Doesn't matter. Maybe the value is flowing into Bitcoin because they'll have the first spot ETF. Doesn't matter. What does matter is what the Ethereum community and developers are doing in the face of that. Ethereum is 10x more technically sound than Bitcoin. So what can we do to stop suffering through the leak? We can celebrate our victories and focus on the path forward. Bullets. The social layer has shown incredible resilience in the face of a centralizing LSD. Our L2 capacity strategy is really paying off with a rich garden of successful L2 chains like Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, ZK Sync, Base, all of which are developing their own ecosystems that feed growth back into Ethereum. We have quickly moved on from the success of the merge, but let me remind you that we hot swapped our consensus mechanism to improve the operation of the network, and we reduced energy consumption by 99.99%. We ought to be writing this with Sharpie markers in every bathroom stall in the world. I fully freaking agree. We have totally lost the green narrative for some stupid reason against Bitcoin. The EIP 1559 fee burn mechanism is a complete success. Sure, we're not ultrasound right now, but that burned ether is gone forever. And the exercise in implementing EIP 1559 solidified our ability to develop an improved sound monetary policy. We are the chain of innovation and new growth. Practically everything new that's happening is happening on Ethereum. The ETH killers have all passed away, and Bitcoin doesn't have the technical ability to do the things that a smart contract platform can do. We're slowly moving closer to a U.S. legal framework that supports the foundations of cryptocurrency. There's a link here. I acknowledge that it's slow AF, but it's definitely moving in a favorable direction. Now, what are you celebrating? What have I missed? What can we do better? These are the questions we need to ask as we accept agency over our current situation. And just for fun, I want to open up this link. I want to view this on Reddit and see what some of those replies were. Let's see the replies. Sharpies ordered. I'm going to stop peeing at home so I can visit more public restrooms. This is the Eat Finance I love right here. Nobody's taking this. They're just like, we go straight into shit posting. I upvotes for everybody. Whack, whack, attack from Rocket Pool. The main thing to remember about 1559 is just how much more usable Ethereum is now compared to before. Almost always get a transaction in within a couple of blocks now because gas prices are way more predictable. It's a gigantic user experience improvement, and most people seem to overlook that aspect of it. It's just kind of there, you know. Well said, whack, whack, attack. Yeah, so it goes on from there. I need to wrap up the show, unless anybody wants to chime in on this. David said, "Yeah, +1 ETH got rugged on the green narrative." Yeah, we just didn't use a big enough megaphone. I mean, whenever I hear Bitcoiners, yeah, but it's helping people discover new green energy they didn't know existed. It's like, what if you didn't have to in the first place? You know what I mean? Duh, right? Let's not put all those pressures on the rest of society by soaking up waste electricity in this thing called Bitcoin. It's done, you know. Anyway, enough of my soapbox. So let's go stick around after the live stream because we continue the party in the hotel lobby here on Discord for a bonus hour of popcorn. It's a fun place to let loose when the parents aren't watching on YouTube. Hi, Mom. On behalf of ETH Finance and the EVMavericks DAO, my name is JT. Cheers and big hugs from Kansas City.